Hello, welcome to the Sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Standard Open in Indianapolis, brought to you by Ultimate Guard. I'm Nick Miller, alongside world champion Braun-Duin. Doesn't get old hearing that, right?
It does not, no.
Yeah?
Definitely not.
All right, well, let's talk about this green-white aggro deck that you, Brad Nelson, Michael Majors worked on a lot. Some of the other Roanoke guys picked up. But this deck, you guys worked on this, and there was talks of even hiding this deck almost until the Pro Tour. But you guys kind of pulled the trigger on it this weekend.
Yeah, we decided to play it, and it seemed like it was just a really strong deck. And I figured it was going to be really good against basically everything unless people had like better Smuggler's Copter decks. Because it has some issues dealing with opposing Smuggler's Copters, but I wasn't sure if what people are going to bring to this tournament.
Sure. So. All right, so we've got the green-white deck, and basically, like, the huge pull to this is you're not a tokens deck, like previous standard. So you kind of diverge from that, and you're playing Verdurous Gearhulk. That's kind of the reason to play this deck, I would say.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily the reason to play the deck, but it's certainly a big reason. It's just it just applies so much pressure to your opponent. That it ends the game extremely quickly, and it also can play defense extremely well as well. It's just a really powerful card, and it fits better into a more aggressive shell than like a more grindier shell. I'd rather have it in a more aggressive deck, and so this version of green-white's like certainly more aggressive than traditional green-white. Right,
and like most Brad, decks that are early on, he kind of has this transformational sideboard where you can kind of be more mid-rangey, but on the surface that this deck just wants kind of to be attacking.
Yes, it's a very aggressive deck. You can sideboard into some like removal spells and like bigger things in the sideboard, but main deck you're pretty much just trying to play the beatdown against almost everything. And sometimes it doesn't work out so well, but the deck certainly doesn't play that well from behind always. So you do want to get out ahead, and I've mulliganed a lot of hands that don't have the ability to get out ahead early.
Right, and you have a bunch of ways to get out ahead. You get to start with Thraben Inspector, you have Sylvan Advocate, and the new Servant of the Conduit here, kind of the mana creature, but also Grizzly Bear when you need it.
Yes.
And then let's talk about that card, and then the new other creature, the Fairgrounds Warden, the new Fiend Hunter here, the early curve.
Yeah, Servant's really good because it lets you just play bigger cards early, like turn 3 Gideon or turn 4 Gearhulk or whatever. It's just a good way to accelerate, and the 2/2 body is still fine because you have so many ways to pump it that it certainly can become a relevant creature in combat, even late in the game. So it's just a pretty good 2-drop, and then Fairgrounds Warden. He plays a lot of bumper cars at the fairgrounds. He likes to crew the vehicles.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And he can also keep in check other small creatures too. So
Yeah, like it's just a good tempo play to be able to if you play a copter on 2, on turn 3 you just fairgrounds their creature and then also get to attack them with Smuggler's Copter. So you're setting them back and you're pushing yourself ahead.
Right.
It's pretty nice.
Right. So of course mainly crewing the copter here, but you also have Tireless Tracker and Gideon. You have 3 of the Blossoming Defenses. I know some of the guys were playing 4, but you made room for 2 copies of Always Watching as well.
Yeah.
The Blossoming Defense here for 1 mana seems very good. A lot of people aren't playing around it this week. How good has that card been?
It's actually been pretty bad.
All right.
Basically, after round 4, 5, or 6 or whatever, enough people had got by Blossoming Defense that pretty much everyone knows about it at this point.
All right.
So I'm not getting anyone more with it, and it's certainly much worse.
All right. So trimming it for the Always Watching looks to be the right choice?
Yeah, for the most part. Always Watching has been hit or miss, but when it's good, it's really, really good.
Sure. And now, the other guys weren't playing this card. What was kind of the push towards this card for you?
Well, the push is that some of these creatures are really bad on their own merits. Thraben Inspector, Fairgrounds Warden, Servant the Conduit. They're not super powerful creatures on their own right, and they basically become good by crewing Copter or getting pumped by Gearhulk or Emblems of Gideon, things like that.
Sure.
So I just wanted another way to turn those creatures into something real.
All right, and of course you got Westville Abbey here as well, kind of in a pinch can make you an Ormondal if you're in that situation.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the sideboard real quick. This is where we kind of got all the removal, because your deck doesn't really have removal in the main deck outside of the Warden.
Right.
So you got basically everything here, from Deck and Stone, Quarantine Field, Fumigate, even Natural State can play removal with all these vehicles running around.
Yeah, I mean the key is to just have versatility. You want different cards for different matchups, and it's nice to just have access to, you don't want to be pigeonholed into having to play a certain game plan against every single deck, because sometimes it's not the way to beat them. So you want to have access to different things, against some of the grindier decks you have Q Field, which is really powerful. Against some of the aggressive decks you have Natural State if they're playing a bunch of artifacts or Fumigates or whatever. And then Deck Stone is just a really powerful card. Sure. It doesn't really have a specific matchup that you want Deck Stone, but it's just good.
Yeah. When you need a clean removal spell, that is the one you go to.
Yeah.
All right, we also got Nissa Vital Force in here. We have not seen a lot of this card on camera this weekend. You got a couple copies in your sideboard. Where that's coming in?
It's going to come in any kind of grindier matchup where your life total is maybe not under a lot of pressure because it just puts a lot of pressure on your opponent and threatens to ultimate and draw you a bunch of cards, or just keep hitting them for 5 damage. So it basically is just a way to in a matchup where your opponent's maybe trying to fumigate you or something like that, you're going to bring in these Nissas and really, it's really hard for them to deal with that.
Okay. So you guys came to this deck and you decided on this one for the tournament.
Yeah.
In your testings, were there any decks you guys that almost reached the level of I could play this at this tournament, or are there any ideas that you had that just weren't quite what you wanted?
If I wasn't going to play this, I was actually just going to play the red-black deck that Jerry posted in his article. Okay. Or maybe Majors or Jerry posted in their article. It was Jerry's red-black deck, sure. And certainly wasn't very particularly tuned, but I played some matches with it, and it was still really good. So that was my fallback. I just wanted to play an aggressive I like to play aggressive decks, but not all-in decks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and of note, the red-black aggro deck is the most popular deck here on day 2. It was leading the field at 17 copies or something.
Doesn't surprise me at all. Yep.
Right. So you were on the right page. You played, one of the best decks, and you had one of the other best decks in your pocket. So going forward, are there any changes you're kind of looking to make to this deck other than, of course, the Blossoming Defense? Yeah,
there's a lot of changes. I just actually don't think that this deck is where I want to be. It's certainly very good. I think it's a good deck, but I don't think it's a great deck. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure how to fix it exactly, but it certainly needs some fine tuning. I'd say it's probably 10 cards off at least. So.
All right. Well, that ain't too bad. I know you, Ross, and I think Tom are all still alive with the deck, so it still has some wheels despite only having one vehicle in it.
Yeah, it's certainly hard to be accurate the first week. You don't know exactly what people are going to come with and stuff like that. So yeah, we're still doing pretty well with it, and there's still a couple rounds to play, so we'll see what happens with that. All
right. Well, we wish you the best of luck here. Thanks for joining me here in the sideboard. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Indy.